Hi, how you going? In this video, I'll be going through the top 10 disappointing bosses in Soulsborne games. Some of these don't respect our time, some of these don't live up to the hype, and the others have really silly gimmicks to them. Of course, it's not the most exhaustive list or anything, and there are just so many bosses in Soulsborne games that bring our piss to a boil one way or another, so if your archenemy is not in the video, don't go, "Oh, actually, Zelen and Lot is not disappointing." Don't do that. These lists are subjective, just share your experience in the comments, let's have an interesting conversation together. And that's it for the intro, let's start. At number 10, I have a boss from Dark Souls 2 that I think nobody likes, and I'm talking about Royal Red Vanguard. It's not the only red boss in Dark Souls 2, by the way. There's also Royal Red Authority, an optional boss that also sucks hobo toes, but I think the Vanguard sucks it even harder. It's one of those gimmick boss fights where once you know what to do, it becomes a piece of piss. It's just annoying. You enter the room full of regular rats and have to find that one Vanguard rat with a huge mohawk on its back. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the overall color palette of the game or me being colorblind or just blind, but every time I fight Royal Red Vanguard, I have problems finding it. Like, I know what to do, what to look for, but I feel like I always spend more time than I have to. So for people who have no issues with like seeing stuff, Royal Red Vanguard is probably just an annoying, boring and unenjoyable fight, but for me it's also slightly rage-inducing. To add some insult to injury, the Vanguard rat doesn't appear straight away and you have to spend some extra time chopping regular rats waiting for the boss health bar to appear. Just a sucky boss fight in one of my most favorite From Software games, by the way. And at number 9, I bring you another very obvious pick. It's a boss from Dark Souls 3 and it easily falls into didn't live up to the hype category. Ancient Wyvern. There are 3 ways to defeat Ancient Wyvern. Number 1. You can fight it right where it appears, just like Zack did. It will take you a long time, the fight is far from spectacular, and you don't get anything extra by defeating it this way, but it's possible. Number 2, you can cheese it, as in find a safe spot and chip away its health using a bow. Could be a good option for soul level 1 runners and people with a lot of time on their hands, I guess. And number 3 is beating the Wyvern the way it was intended, with one single plunge attack to its stupid gigantic head. Dark Souls 3 was my 3rd game in the series, so I wasn't new to gimmick bosses, but the Wyvern fight was and still is especially disappointing because of all the build-up. The first time you see the Wyvern, and I'm pretty sure it's not the same Wyvern, but you get the point, is at High Wall of Lothric, and it straight off the bat lets you know that it doesn't play games with you. As a new player, I was bloody terrified to cross that area every single time. And you know, unreachable enemies is not a new thing. There was a dragon in Dark Souls 1, but in Dark Souls 1 you don't get to fight it. You fight Calamite instead and it kicks your arse more than once. And in Dark Souls 3 they decided to let us fight it. They gave us time for revenge type fights. I remember getting through that fog wall for the first time. The chat on the stream was like, "Aye, chat, wait for it, wait for it." My nipples went so hard they could cut glass, but then I saw what I had to do. My nipples went soft and I got immensely disappointed. Ancient Wyvern is a crappy boss, a wasted opportunity, and it deserves to be on every single shit list. Every single one of them. Next up at number 8, I have another gimmick boss with a terrible runback. It's Executioner's Chariot. This one has 2 phases, if you can call it that. The first one is a pure gimmick, where you have to run through a circular corridor and hide from the chariot in these little safe pockets, while dealing with skeletons and mages. Once you reach the lever and pull it, the second phase begins, and well, it's not too bad. I mean, you get to actually fight the boss and everything. There are few reasons why this boss is in the video. First of all, it's a gimmick fight, and despite looking pretty cool, it's interesting only one time. And secondly, as with any gimmick fight, you die a few times before you figure out the gimmick, and that results in one of the nastiest runbacks. The boss room is pretty far from the bonfire, you have to run past a bunch of dudes with whips, and on top of that there's an NPC right in front of the fog gate you kinda have to beat if you want to invest in your future comfort. I will probably make a separate video with worst Soulsborne games boss runbacks, but Executioner's Chariot has every right to be on this list as well. It was fun once, I liked it once, but I will never enjoy fighting it again. And about time we switched to something other than Dark Souls games, because the next one, number 7, is from Demon Souls. Demon Souls is an OG game and I don't feel like criticizing it too much, but most of the bosses in Demon Souls have gimmicks. For this particular video I picked one boss and it's Dragon God. Quite similar to Ancient Wyvern, it's a boss fight where you don't have to fight. And again, similar to Ancient Wyvern, there's a certain build up to it that ends in a what? A stealth mission! That's right. This is a Dragon God we're talking about. We're talking about a god. But once you get to quote unquote fight it, you just need to activate a couple of ballistas and you're good to go. I don't want to linger too much talking about Dragon God, and I understand the logic behind this encounter. Like there's no way to beat a god in honest hand-to-hand combat, so you have to be a sneaky shit instead, but nonetheless, it's quite disappointing. And at number 6, I have 2 separate bosses at once. Is it against the rules? I don't know, I don't think so. I make the rules here. So number 6. At number 6 I have Smelter Demon and Blue Smelter Demon from Dark Souls 2. Smelter Demon is a boss that has arguably the worst run back in the base game. The first half of the location, the Iron Keep, is just a pure f***ing nightmare gangfest, especially if you are a new player. If you are a vet, it's much more manageable since you know the map layout and are aware of all the f***ing archer douchebags, but nonetheless the Iron Keep is a quintessence of bullshittery. And again, I will probably make a separate video with the worst runbacks because as a boss, Smelter Demon is good. I mean, it looks pretty generic and boring and has a ripe arsehole for a face, but it's tough, it has an interesting moveset, and it will kill you a few times, especially on your first playthrough, which will result in running back to it through literal hell. In my opinion, Smelter Demon is a decent boss, but your experience can and probably will be soured by one of the most terrible runbacks. Like, by the time you finally get him, you don't care anymore. You're just glad that this psycho circus is over. It's a known fact that Hidetaka Miyazaki was not involved with Dark Souls 2, but came back to help with the DLC, and I feel like the first thing he said was something along the lines of, "Oh, these people are complaining about the Smelter Demon, dude, let's make another version of it, but f***ing double down on the bullshittery for the runback." And that's how Blue Smelter Demon was born, it feels like. Blue Smelter Demon is a good boss with an absolutely abysmal runback. I'll be honest, I don't feel 100% comfortable adding yet another boss to the video purely for the runback, but just like with the OG Smelter Demon, this one automatically becomes disappointing because of the hell you have to go through to get to the boss room. I hate it now, I always will, and I'm never looking forward to fighting these two arseholes. At number 5 I have this weird boss from Dark Souls 3 and it's High Lord Wolnir. High Lord Wolnir is a giant skeleton covered in jewelry, and in order to defeat him you need to attack him right in his jewels. Seriously, the only way to hurt Wolnir is to attack bracelets on his wrists, and I feel like it could have been an interesting fight if there were more mechanics to it. It took me a while to find out that Wolnir can actually summon skeletons, and there's also this other rare move where he summons a huge sword to attack you. But probably the most annoying thing about this fight is how RNGesus it can be. You can get stuck underneath him and just die, and he sometimes also moves his right arm far behind and it's very hard to reach. At least the way he's presented is really cool. I mean, the way he looks is quite unnerving, and for example his final moment where he gets dragged straight into the abyss is disturbing as hell. So I guess every cloud has a silver lining. And my number 4 on the list is a bloodborne boss called Witch of Hamwick. It's one of the easier bosses in the game and it's a puzzle fight where you fight with your head, not your fists. Well, okay, you fight with your head first and then you fight with your fists. Despite of what the name suggests, there are actually 2 witches, visually identical, and the second witch's health bar doesn't appear until you kill the first one, although you can locate it, attack it, and even deal damage to it. It will look like you deal no damage at all though, because you can't see the second health bar. There are also these freaky creatures called the Mad Ones, and interestingly enough, if you go in with 0 insight, the Mad Ones won't spawn. But it's impossible because once you witness the witch for the first time, you automatically get 1 insight. You can actually make the fight much easier by entering the boss room and using the bold hunter's mark, then spending your insight and coming back. And this trivializes the fight to the max. Okay, number 3, Pinwheel. I actually quite like everything about Pinwheel except for the fight itself. I like the way he looks, I like the lore, his story, the music, all that stuff. But when it comes to the actual fights, you know the deal. Pinwheel is probably the weakest boss in the game and maybe in the whole series. It's probably harder to avoid all the wheelie boys on the way to Pinwheel than to beat Pinwheel. I don't know, it could be From Software's way to apologize for the catacombs, but no, they slap you in the face with Tomb of the Giants literally 5 minutes later. Look, there's nothing much more to say about Pinwheel. He's the laughing stock of Lordran, but at least he sometimes drops the giant dead mask. He's like the sorting hat of Dark Souls, deciding if you're worthy enough to become the man. Imagine me dying to Pinwheel now. Oh! Don't tell anyone. And at number 2, I have another Bloodborne boss, and it's... oh my goodness, it's Mikolash.
Cos. Or some say Cosmo.
Mikolash, the host of Nightmare, is a boss that runs away from you. That's the best way to describe it, really. From Software just love that shit, don't they? Everything about this one is just annoying, and it feels like was designed with one sole purpose in mind: to piss you off. Dickalash is like this obnoxious little kid on the internet that writes mean comments because he knows you can't bitch slap him through the screen. Fortunately for us, we can bitch slap Mikolash, and with all honesty, he deserves that because he's a bitch. This fight is actually pretty easy when you know what to do and where to run. The first phase is all about chasing the sick dog down through the labyrinth of corridors and stairs. At some point you finally corner him and give him a good old smackaroo, but then he disappears in a cloud of smoke and you have to do some running again until you drop down through a hole in the floor and finish him off for good. It's just a very annoying boss fight, and if you don't know what to do, and if you're going into Bloodborne blind as you should, you won't know. The whole thing feels impossible. You're just Alright. I feel like my number 1 won't surprise anyone. It's just so natural to put this disgusting abomination of a boss where number 1 is. Like, come on, say it, let's say it together. 3, 2, 1, bed. That's right, you're correct, see? High five! Subscribe to the channel real quick, by the way. Dark Souls 1 gets progressively worse after Einor Londo, so it's no surprise you eventually stumble upon a boss as shit as Beta Chaos. I can talk about Beta Chaos for ages, even though there's nothing to talk about. The whole area lost Izalith, just like these dragon asses you meet there, is half finished, if you know what I mean. But Beta Chaos goes above and beyond. Everything about it is pathetic. It looks dumb, the gimmick is the worst thing I've ever seen. You just need to what? Break sticks on the left, break sticks on the right, and then, oh my, break sticks in the middle to get to its core and destroy it. And all that while avoiding its hectic attacks and dodging holes in the floor. And I know that Beta Chaos is not a problem to anyone anymore. There are numerous ways to cheese it, to make it all go faster, but for a first time player, Beta Chaos is a terrible, ugly, disgusting, pissy obstacle. He can make you mad, and it will take some time for you to figure out what to do, then to find a perfect trajectory, but it doesn't matter because it's also RNG. And on top of that, to enter the boss room, you have to slide down for a good 10 seconds. Like, why is it even there? From Software people, and Mr. Miyazaki in particular, are known for being trolls, but this is just next level shit. In the very beginning of the video, I referenced Zalen and Lud, and they are not here because, like I said earlier, I will make another video featuring the worst boss runbacks, and I'm keeping them for it. Stay tuned for that one. And that's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. You can also subscribe, it supports the channel greatly. Let me know in the comments which bosses are the most disappointing to you, and as usual, thank you for watching. See ya.